Touchdown, Alabama, let's get it.
The process, no one can stop this. Hottest show in the streets, I bet you can't top this. Rammer, jammer, yellow hammer, come see how we rock this. Alabama fans the best, there's no way you can top this. Recruiting news and interviews, just sit back and watch this.
Recruiting news and interviews, just sit back and watch this.
The process.
Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome into Thursday's episode of The Process, Crimson Tide Recruiting. I am your host, Justin Smith, the scouting and recruiting analyst for Touchdown Alabama magazine. I am here on Touchdown Alabama's YouTube page every Tuesday and Thursday evening to break down the latest in Tide football recruiting news. So if you are not subscribed, be sure to hit that subscribe button below. Also be sure to leave a like whether you are subscribed or not. With the college football season wrapping up officially on Monday night with the Crimson Tide picking up a national championship victory over the Ohio State Buckeyes, the coaching carousel is in full rotation, and the Crimson Tide are finding themselves on the receiving end of a lot of coaching changes. These coaching changes could have a big impact on the Tide's recruiting efforts, so that is what I want to dive into today, specifically the Tide losing their special teams coordinator and tight end coach Jeff Banks to Texas. He is taking his talents back to the Lone Star State to coach under Steve Sarkisian at the University of Texas. Of course, Jeff Banks has been instrumental in the Tide's push for recruits inside the state of Texas during his time in Tuscaloosa, but I will dive deeper into that when I get a chance to break down some of the coaching changes in their recruiting impact. I also want to dive into a couple of recruiting updates as always to get the ball rolling today. So with that being said, let's get the process started. I have a couple of recruiting updates to hit you guys with today, starting with five-star linebacker Sean Murphy out of Virginia, releasing a top 8. Murphy is one of the top inside linebackers in the 2022 recruiting class. He is definitely one of the kids we will continue to keep tabs on as his recruitment moves forward. The Tide offered him when he was a freshman. They have continued to build a relationship with him as they hosted him for one of their junior day events in February. So Murphy is a kid we will keep tabs on moving forward. And I think Tide fans need to keep an eye on his recruitment. Another 2022 prospect to release a top schools list on yesterday was Terrence Gibbs, a 4-star running back out of Florida, as multiple 2022 prospects continue to cut down the top schools list at this time. The last couple of recruiting updates I want to provide you guys with today surround a couple of 2023 prospects I think Tide fans need to know about. The first guy is Sylvester Smith out of Munford High School in Munford, Alabama, at 6'1" and 190 pounds. This is a very aggressive athlete, kid who showed a lot of potential as a sophomore at Munford High School. I think he will be on the Crimson Tide's radar in the future. Another 2023 prospect I think Tide fans need to know about is Ethan Nation, a defensive back out of Roswell High School in Roswell, Georgia. Looking at Nation, he had a pretty impressive sophomore season, a breakout season, as he was able to pull in 8 interceptions in 8 games. He was a ball hawk on the defensive side of football. Be sure to check out my stories and my interviews with Sylvester Smith and Ethan Nation over at touchdownalabama.com. Smith has offers from Tennessee and Mercer at the moment. Nation has a pretty long list of offers, including offers from Georgia, Penn State, and other schools. But now I am going to dive into the impact the Tide losing a couple of coaches will have on their recruiting efforts. There are a lot of coaching changes happening in Tuscaloosa at the moment, with Steve Sarkisian taking the head coaching job at the University of Texas, and with multiple Tide assistants expected to join him in Austin. Looking at the Tide's offensive line coach Kyle Flood and the Tide special teams coordinator and tight end coach Jeff Banks, who are both expected to take jobs in Austin. Looking at Flood and the impact he has had on the Tide's recruiting effort, I think he really came into himself as a recruiter in the 2021 recruiting cycle, helping the Tide pull in one of the most impressive offensive line classes in recent memory, signing 2 5-star offensive linemen in J.C. Latham and Tommy Brockermeyer, also adding a group of 4-star offensive linemen in James Brockermeyer, Jaden Roberts, and also Terrence Ferguson. I think the thing that Flood was able to do on the recruiting trail was he was able to paint the picture and demonstrate to recruits that he knew what it took to be an NFL offensive lineman. And just going back to my talk with the Brockermeyer twins' father, Blake Brockermeyer, he is a former NFL offensive lineman, and he was impressed with the way that Kyle Flood was coaching offensive linemen during his time in Tuscaloosa. And that was one of the reasons he was right on board with his sons taking their talents to the University of Alabama, with him being a Texas legacy. And I think the Tide will miss that, and also miss what he has been able to do as an offensive line coach on the field. The Tide had a Joe Moore award-winning offensive line this season, so they will miss Flood, of course, but I think they will miss Jeff Banks even more from a recruiting perspective. Of course, he was the Tide special teams coordinator and their tight end coach. He gave Will Weichert the confidence to have literally a perfect season when it comes to kicking field goals, kicking extra points this season. He also helped the Tide's tight ends develop and help the Tide continue to have an extra element in their offense, especially when you look at Jaleel Billingsley. I did think he wanted to continue to add more athletic tight ends to the Tide's roster. Unfortunately, it looks like he would not be able to do that. I do think Robbie Oots is one of those guys who was more of a hybrid tight end, but I think he wanted to go more in the direction of adding athletic tight ends, but I'm pretty sure he would strive to do that at the University of Texas once it is announced that he will be their special teams coordinator, most likely. But looking at what Banks has done during his time in Tuscaloosa on the recruiting front, it is nothing short of impressive. Just looking at the 2021 recruiting class, helping the Tide sign the likes of Christian Leary, AJ Hall, Jalen Miro, the Texas product. Looking at Kamar Wheaton, another Texas product who was verbally committed to the Tide. He has not signed a national letter of intent with the University of Alabama. I'm not saying he's going to flip his commitment, but that is just something to pay attention to. Jeff Banks was his lead recruiter. Wheaton is a Texas product, and he was going to be coached under Steve Sarkisian in Alabama if Sarkisian stayed in Tuscaloosa. So Kamar Wheaton's recruitment could be interesting over the next couple of weeks. He seems to be brought in with the Crimson Tide, but if you are Jeff Banks, if you are Steve Sarkisian, if I was in their shoes, I would have to go after him. It's nothing personal, not a personal shot to Nick Saban, but we are trying to get in the winning business. It is a business decision. Nick Saban is in the winning business. We are trying to get in the winning business. Well, Steve Sarkisian and Jeff Banks are trying to get into the winning business in Texas, and I think that is something that they will have to do. I think they will be doing themselves a disservice if they just did not at least reach out to Kamar Wheaton. But Jeff Banks did get a commitment from Kamar Wheaton. Wheaton committed to the Tide after the early signing period, and Jeff Banks was his lead recruiter. As I said, another prospect who Jeff Banks helped the Tide pull in this 2021 recruiting class, another Texas product and four-star linebacker, Kendrick Blackshear out of Duncanville High School in Texas. So Jeff Banks did a pretty good job for the Tide on the recruiting trail over the last couple of recruiting cycles. It was pretty evident that the Tide was going to raid Texas early on in this 2021 recruiting cycle. I remember writing an article about it because of what I was hearing from recruits concerning Alabama, and just hearing what they had to say about Jeff Banks, just the way he was able to connect with them, just the way he was able to just demonstrate what they will be able to do at the University of Alabama. And I think he's going to be missed heavily when it comes to the Tide on the recruiting trail, just with the way he can connect with recruits. And he was also able to help the Tide pull in some great tight ends in each recruiting class. For example, the Tide pulled in a underrated tight end in this 2021 recruiting class in Robbie Oots. The Tide also pulled in a commitment from four-star tight end Caden Clark in the 2020 recruiting class. Unfortunately, he was unable to come during this past season, but he was able to rehab and take a great shirt. He is expected to join the Tide here in this 2021 recruiting class. So the Tide has some good tight ends coming in as a result of Jeff Banks' recruiting efforts, but I think he will definitely be missed on the recruiting front with the way he's able to recruit the state of Texas. I said once Steve Sarkisian got the job at the University of Texas that he was going to go after Jeff Banks. He wants to keep the best talent inside the state of Texas, and you will be doing yourself a disservice if you do not go after Banks. You have seen what he can do inside the state of Texas. He has helped you pull in some impressive prospects for a potential future in Tuscaloosa. And if you want to lock down the state of Texas, how can you say you're doing your best to do that if you have this ace recruiter sitting in Tuscaloosa? So it did not surprise me that Steve Sarkisian in Texas threw the bag at Jeff Banks, because he expected to make $1 million as the special teams coach at the University of Texas. But as I said, I think these are huge blows to the Tide's recruiting efforts. But Tide fans should just trust in Nick Saban. This is not unusual territory for Saban. At this point, it wouldn't surprise me if he just had a long list of names right in his first draw, his top draw. Once a guy comes in and say, yo, I am taking my coaching talents to another school, Nick Saban said, okay, good luck to you. He just opens that top drawer, and he just has this list with a long list of names. So that would not surprise me, and I think Tide fans should just trust in Nick Saban. He is used to this. I think he is built for this at this moment with the amount of coaching turnovers that has happened during his tenure in Tuscaloosa. So these are going to be big blows. I think Tide are going to feel that blow, especially when it comes to recruiting the state of Texas. When you have Jeff Banks now as a Texas Longhorn, you have Steve Sarkisian, who is shining, making Texas look like an attractive spot at the moment. Of course, you have to produce on the field. No one really wants to see all of the hype. A lot of recruits, a lot of their family, they want to see the team produce and show some different things on the football field as well. But I think it is going to be quite interesting to see how that program can develop, and also quite interesting to see how the Crimson Tide will fill this hole, because you're going to have to go after some guys who can produce on the field first off, but you also are going to have to go after some guys who can recruit. Recruiting is about building relationships, so you are going to want to get a guy who can really build a relationship with prospects. I know the Tide's defensive back coach Carl Scott has some ties to the state of Texas. I'm pretty sure he's going to be tasked with, especially in the meantime, keeping that pipeline going, just staying in contact with a lot of Texas recruits until the Tide could possibly send in some more help with a couple of their new hires. But that's what I wanted to talk about today. Just talk about how the loss of Jeff Banks, the expected losses at the moment of Jeff Banks and Kyle Flood, and the impact that will have on the Tide's recruiting efforts. That will do it for this episode of The Process. Be sure to hit that like button. Also be sure to hit that subscribe button as well before you leave. Then head over to touchdownalabama.com. Pick up your subscription today. With that subscription, you will be able to read all of our subscriber-only articles, get your hands on our yearly print magazine issue, also get an opportunity to read our in-depth scouting reports on each Tide commit in each recruiting class. Also get a chance to read our in-depth draft projections with the NFL 2021 NFL draft coming up in a couple of months now, as multiple Crimson Tide juniors declared for the NFL draft on today. Then head to the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store if you have an Apple device, and download the Touchdown Alabama app so breaking news notifications can be sent to your mobile device. As always, I am Justin Smith, the scouting and recruiting analyst for Touchdown Alabama magazine.
Process.